All right. Good evening. My name is Specialist Patio, and I'm going to be teaching you guys a class today. Today's brief is going to be on interpersonal communication. The classification of this brief is unclassified. Now, the purpose of this brief is to explain 3 types of interpersonal communication. For example, it's going to be tone of voice, body language, and facial expressions. Now, my first body paragraph is going to be about your tone of voice. Tone of voice pretty much means how your business comes through your words. Soldiers must be careful how they speak to one another. Now, when I say that, I mean in terms of soldiers, NCOs, I should say, need to be mindful and very careful how they word things to those underneath them. Because if a NCO comes off, if he says something and it comes off in a negative way, it can have that soldier think that his NCO doesn't care nothing about him and doesn't really want to hear what he has to say or anything like that. So the whole moral of my first body paragraph is just saying that the moral of the story is you just need to be careful with how you word things. Period. You need to be careful with how you word things, and that, some people's feelings get hurt. And as an NCO, you never want to hurt your soldiers' feelings. My second body paragraph is going to be about body language. Body language is pretty much the process of communicating non-verbally with gestures and movements. So body language can be things like shrugging good posture, shrugging your shoulders when you don't know something. Pretty much if you're standing too close to anyone, eye contact, stuff of that nature. When talking to people, it is good to use eye contact. This shows that you are engaged and interested in in the conversation that is being held. Body language reveals more about a person than verbal communication. It's crazy that it does, because it's like you would think that whenever you're saying something to someone, that you would probably, that would show more about how you feel about them than how just with your body language is just showing you more on how you look at that person, how you feel about them. It's incredible. My third paragraph is going to be about facial expressions. Now, facial expressions can say a lot of things. It can say when you're happy, when you're sad. It can say when you're happy, when you're sad, how you feel at the moment, if you're not in the mood, how you feel about that person, how you feel about what is being said. Facial expression I would say, is one of the most important factors of interpersonal communication. Depending on how your face look in certain situations, when something is being said, can either have a negative or positive connotation on how a person looks and views you. For example, first of all, facial expressions is the movement of your face that conveys emotions. That's all facial expressions mean. For example, facial expressions like sadness and happiness mean the same thing in every culture. No matter what culture, so pretty much all cultures throughout the world, the facial expressions of happiness, sadness, laughter, joy, it all means the same thing across the board. It never changes, no matter what culture you go to. Now, my conclusion is pretty much interpersonal communication is important and is essential in order for the Army to operate. Without communication, the Army or any organization would fail. It would not work. It simply would not last. And without communication, how will we survive? We need communication in order to survive and to be able to get through, especially in today's world, in order to be able to get through these challenging times. Other types of communication include verbal communication, written, and active listening. Written communication is pretty much things that you put down on paper. That's all it is. So pretty much how you write and what you write down on paper. That's all written communication is. Pretty much just what you write. Active listening is basically just being able to listen to people and being able to interpret and understand exactly what that person is trying to say. That's all active listening is. Now, in order for leadership in terms of the chain of command to run smoothly, NCOs must be able to communicate with their soldiers. It is an absolute must. This is one trait that every NCO needs to have, because whenever stuff is getting passed, when our officers tell us what to do, we need to be able to push that message along to the people beneath us. We need to be able to push the message out and be able to get the task done. Now, are there any questions?
How many body languages are there?
There are 22 different type of body languages, such as eye contact, the shrugness of the shoulders, and I would say another type of body language would be like, usually if someone likes you, they're turned towards you, usually. So I would say being turned towards somebody can sometimes be a form of body language. Any more questions?
What leadership traits do you think it takes to develop a well-established NCO?
I would say leadership traits that it takes. I would say that you need to be able to know how to communicate. You need to know how to be able to communicate. You need to know how to understand and realize that you as an NCO, you was once a soldier at some point. And another thing I would say is you have to be caring and actually be willing to help your soldier out. You have to actually be wanting to develop them and help them get to that position to where they just go on to do great and better things. NCO traits, to me, just to add to that define a really good NCO would be other things would be such as, say for example, if your soldier doesn't have a car, if he doesn't have a car and your soldier needs to learn how to drive, or he needs to be taken to his appointments or whatnot, you as an NCO should take charge and pretty much help your soldier to be able to get to wherever they gotta go so they won't miss their appointments, to where no one gets in trouble. And also, if they don't know how to drive, you as that person's NCO should learn, you should be out there teaching them how to drive and helping them get their license to where they be squared away. Are there any more questions?
No.
Okay, well, if that's the case, this concludes my brief.